The year I turned 34, I set 8 places for Thanksgiving and watched every one of them go cold. The candles burned low. The turkey dried out. The gravy formed a skin on top. My phone stayed quiet until it didn't, and when the truth finally came, it came like a knife. My whole family was together at my sister's house, laughing, eating, passing dishes around, while I sat alone at a table I had spent days building for them. I thought that was the cruelest thing they could do to me. I was wrong. Because that same night, my grandfather stepped out of the snow, put an old envelope in my hand, and destroyed the lie my family had fed me my entire life. By spring, 3 of them would wish I had never opened it. Welcome back to the Hidden Family Revenge Stories, where quiet people let the truth speak louder than the family that tried to bury it. If you've ever had to build your own peace after being shut out of someone else's table, stay with me. I had been awake since 6 that morning because when I get scared, I cook. I clean. I fix. I line things up so neatly that nobody can point to one flaw and say that's why they didn't come. I'm a CPA in Omaha. November is full of estate papers, trust accounts, missing receipts, and grieving people who suddenly care a lot about where every dollar went. I know what money hides. I know what paperwork remembers. And I know that numbers tell the truth long after people stop pretending they will. That year was the first year I had a house big enough to host everyone. I told myself I was doing something generous. That was only half true. The other half was uglier. I wanted proof. Proof that I finally mattered enough to be chosen. For 32 years, I had tried to earn my place in the Bennett family by being useful, quiet, reliable, easy. I was the one who brought dessert, showed up early, stayed late, never asked for anything, and thanked them for every crumb of warmth they offered. Thanksgiving was just my grown-up version of a little girl holding out a report card and waiting for someone to say they were proud. I started on Tuesday with the turkey brine. On Wednesday I ironed the napkins. I polished the silver. I wrote everyone's names by hand on little place cards, even the people I suspected might cancel, because hope is stubborn. It keeps making room for people who have already decided not to come. By 10 that morning, the whole house smelled like butter and sage and rosemary. The spiced pear pie was cooling on the counter. The windows had that soft holiday glow. For a little while, I let myself believe this was the year it would be different. At 10:15, my phone lit up. The first text was from my brother, Mason. Hey. Something came up. Can't make it. Sorry. That was it. No detail. No call. No effort. Then my sister Elise. Change of plans. We'll do something another time. No apology. Just a cut. Clean and quick. I stood there staring at the screen, telling myself it could still be okay. Maybe mom and dad were running late. Maybe traffic was bad. Maybe someone got sick. Maybe. I had spent most of my life living inside maybe. Then the truth arrived by accident. A photo popped up from a group chat I had forgotten I was still in. Someone had tagged me by mistake. It was Elise's dining room. My parents were there. Mason was pouring wine. My niece was laughing with mashed potatoes on her plate. My mother was smiling at the head of the table like she had built the perfect holiday. And in the middle of the table sat a big white platter I knew by heart, because I had bought it for her 3 Christmases earlier. They were all there. They had simply chosen a different table. My hand shook so hard I almost dropped the phone when I called my mother, Vivian. She answered on the 4th ring, and I could hear dishes clinking behind her. People talking. Someone laughing. A life happening without me. Nora, she said, already annoyed. It's a busy day. I asked her, very calmly, why no one had come. There was a pause. I can still hear it. Not because she felt guilty. Because she was deciding how honest she wanted to be. Then she said, we only set one good table this year. And she hung up. Just like that. No excuse. No comfort. No lie soft enough to hide inside. Just the truth in its ugliest form. I stood in my kitchen with 8 place settings and 1 beating heart, and I finally understood something I should have understood years before. They had not forgotten me. Forgetting would have been kinder. They had remembered me, talked about me, made a choice about me, and gone somewhere else anyway. The food got cold. The candles sank into wax. And I sat down at the head of the table and ate alone. You need to understand something about me. Eating alone at a family table was not new. I had been doing it my whole life, even when the chairs were full. As far back as I could remember, I had been told the same story. I came to the Bennetts when I was 2. I was taken in. Saved. Given a roof. Given food. Given a chance. It was told to me like a blessing, but it always landed like a warning. Be grateful. Don't ask questions. Don't expect too much. Birthdays were sometimes remembered after dinner, if at all. I wore Elisa's old coats and was told I should be thankful they were still warm. When school awards came home, mine got a nod. Elisa's got a celebration. There are some lessons children learn without anyone saying them out loud. Mine was simple. You are here because we allowed it. Don't ever forget that. But one day my mother did say it out loud. I was 12. The cousins were going to a lake house for a weekend, and I asked why I couldn't go too. She knelt down so our faces were even. Her voice was soft, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. You were a kindness, Nora, she said. Not a daughter. Then she stood up and went back to folding towels like she had explained something reasonable. I didn't cry in front of her. I went to my room and studied until my eyes hurt. Somewhere in my little girl brain, I had decided that if I could just be good enough, helpful enough, easy enough, then maybe one day they would stop saying kindness and start meaning family. It is exhausting to build your whole life around being hard to throw away. There was only one person in that house who never made me feel like I had to earn my chair. My grandfather, Henry. He called me sweetheart like the word belonged to me. When I was little, he would sit me on a stool in his kitchen every fall and teach me how to make spiced pear pie. His hands were huge. Mine were tiny. He would guide my fingers over the rolling pin and laugh when flour got on my nose. Cardamom, clove, brown sugar, pears so ripe they bruised if you held them too hard. I knew the recipe by heart before I knew long division. I never once stopped to ask how that recipe had found me. I just thought it lived in Grandpa's hands. By that Thanksgiving, he was nearly 80. He had fallen in September on the back step after the first frost. After that, he moved slower. Some days he was clear. Other days his words drifted. My mother had stepped in to manage things, which sounded helpful, and at the time I was relieved someone was watching out for him. I didn't ask many questions. I was too busy trying to stay useful to people who kept me just close enough to serve them. That night, after the family left me to eat alone, the pie sat untouched on the counter. The smell of it filled the whole kitchen. I looked at it and felt sick with loneliness. Then the doorbell rang. It was after 6. Dark outside. Snow falling. I almost didn't answer. I thought maybe Elise had come to explain, or worse, to smooth it over with fake kindness. I had no strength left for either. But through the glass I saw an old man bent under the snow, and I ran. Grandpa was standing on my porch with no hat, his shoulders white, his thin hair wet, his face red from the cold. He looked tired enough to break. They told me you weren't hosting this year, he said as I pulled him inside. Then I saw your name cards on your mother's table. 8 cards. 7 chairs full at Elisa's. He had counted. That part still gets me. His mind had been cloudy for weeks, but he counted the chairs and knew exactly who was missing. Me. I got him out of his coat, sat him down, wrapped his hands around a mug of tea. His fingers were shaking, and not just from the cold. Nora, he said, they keep bringing me papers now. I sign them. Sometimes I don't know what they say, Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. It was old, yellow at the edges, soft from being handled too much. He pressed it into my hand and closed my fingers around it with both of his. "I should have given you this years ago," he said. "Lily made me promise. And I was a coward. I kept the promise to everybody but you." "Who's Lily?" I asked. The name hit me strangely. I had never heard it before, but it felt like hearing a song I somehow already knew. He looked at the envelope in my hand. "Open it." My fingers were shaking now too. Inside were 3 things. A photograph. A folded letter. And an official paper with a state seal. I opened the official paper first because that's who I am. People lie. Forms don't. It was a birth certificate. The original kind. Full name. Date. Weight. Hospital. And under mother, typed in old flat letters, it said, Lily Bennett. Not unknown. Not blank. Not stranger. Bennett. My last name had been mine before anyone ever claimed they gave it to me. I looked up at Grandpa, and suddenly I could barely breathe. "Who is Lily?" He swallowed hard. "She was my daughter," he said. "My youngest." "She was your mother." I stared at him. The room felt strange, like the floor had shifted. Lily. My mother. My actual mother. Not Vivian. Not the woman who had spent my whole life calling me a kindness. Lily had been Vivian's sister-in-law. My Uncle Thomas's little sister. A person whose name had never once been spoken in front of me. "She died," Grandpa said quietly. "Black ice on Highway 75. You were almost 2. You were asleep in the back seat. You didn't have a scratch on you." I couldn't speak. He took my hand and turned it over in his. Ran his thumb over my palm. "You have her hands," he whispered. "Every year when you made that pie, I saw Lily." The pie. I looked at the one cooling on my counter and felt something split open inside me. "That recipe," he said, his voice cracking, "was hers. I kept teaching it to you so some piece of her would stay alive in this family after they erased her name." Erased. That was the word. My whole life, I had believed I was outside the family. A guest. A favor. A burden taken in. And now a single sheet of paper told me I had been blood all along. Not a stranger brought home. A daughter already home. I asked the question that had been building in my chest for years without a name. Why would they hide that from me? Grandpa shut his eyes for a second. "After Lily died, somebody had to raise you. I was too old. Thomas was the clear choice. But Vivian had just lost a baby of her own. Money was bad. Grief was all over that house. She said she'd take you on one condition. That nobody tell you whose child you were." I stared at him. "She didn't want a ghost at her table," he said. "She wanted gratitude, not connection. And Thomas, he chose peace. So they gave you a story instead of the truth." Every memory snapped into place. The old coats. The late birthdays. The careful reminders that I should be thankful. The distance. The ranking. It had never been random. It had never been careless. It was maintenance. If I believed I was a favor, I would never ask for what belonged to me. I would never question why I was treated less. I would never think I had a right to anything. A daughter can object. A kindness can only say thank you. I opened the letter next. The paper was soft with age. The writing was neat and looping, young and sure. "My dear Nora." I stopped there. Nobody in that family had ever written dear to me. The letter was from Lily. She had written it on a sleepless night when I was a baby. She wrote about my tiny fists. About how I grabbed her finger and would not let go. She wrote that I had a stubborn chin. She wrote that she was scared because she was a young single mother and the world was hard and people judged what they didn't understand. And then she wrote the sentence that changed something in me forever. Please make sure she knows she was never a burden to me. She was the best thing I ever did. I pressed my hand over my mouth and cried so hard I couldn't see. All my life, I had been treated like an obligation. And here was my mother, dead before I could remember her, reaching across 34 years to tell me I had been wanted, loved, chosen. The best thing she ever did. There was more. Near the end, Lily wrote about money. Small money. Honest money. She said she had been cleaning houses and saving what she could for me. Not much, but enough so I would never have to feel like anyone's charity. Enough so I could stand on my own feet one day. Folded with the letter was another note, this one in Grandpa's old handwriting. Lily's money for Nora, plus what I've added. To be kept for her until she's ready. I went cold. Grandpa, I said slowly, your care account. The one Mom has been using. Was that? He looked confused for a second, then sad. I think so, he said. I knew. I knew before I checked one statement. My dead mother had saved money cleaning other people's homes so her daughter would never feel like a burden. And my family had spent it. On themselves. Grandpa leaned back in the chair, exhausted. Then he said, there's something else. My accounts feel lighter. I can't explain it better than that. And Thomas wanted me to sign something about the house. That was the moment my grief found a direction. I am very good at one thing. I know how to follow money. I took his hands in mine and said, will you let me look? Relief passed over his face so fast it almost hurt to see. I was hoping you'd ask. That night, after I tucked a blanket around him on my couch and watched him drift to sleep, I sat at the same table where I had eaten alone and opened my laptop. The empty chairs were still around me like witnesses. I started with a blank spreadsheet. Then I started tracing footprints. The first thing I found was the durable power of attorney. Grandpa had signed it 6 weeks after his fall, naming Vivian as his agent. On its own, that meant nothing. Families do it all the time. But under Nebraska law, the person holding that power has to use it for the older person's benefit, not their own. By midnight, I already knew this was not care. It was a harvest. Starting in April, money had moved out of Grandpa's accounts in neat, steady chunks. $12,000 to Elise in May. Memo line, loan. $9,000 to Mason in June. Also listed as a loan. No repayment records. No formal notes. No payment plans. Just money leaving an old man's account and landing in the laps of his grown children. Then the big one. The account Grandpa had kept for his own care, the one Lily's money had been folded into years ago, had been nearly emptied by fall. A new SUV for Elise. A roof for Mason. A kitchen remodel on a house that was not Grandpa's. And in my mother's email, tucked inside draft messages, I found a half-finished new will and an unsigned agreement for the sale of Grandpa's house. Lily's house. They weren't just spending his money. They were dismantling his life while he was still living in it. I read Lily's letter again after midnight, slowly this time, with the spreadsheet glowing beside it. She had written that she wanted me to stand on my own feet. Vivian had called me a kindness. Those two women had looked at the same little girl and seen two completely different things. That was the whole story. I called a lawyer the next morning. Her name was Elaine Porter. Elder law. Gray hair. Sharp eyes. No nonsense. I laid the whole thing out. The power of attorney. The transfers. The drained account. The possible sale of the house. Lily's letter. My birth certificate. The lie I had been raised inside. Elaine didn't gasp. She just listened, took notes, and asked the questions that mattered. Then she said, what you're describing may be elder financial exploitation. Misuse of a power of attorney can be a serious breach. We can petition for an accounting. We can ask the court to suspend her authority. We can report this. She was careful with every word. No promises. No fake confidence. Just a path. It won't be fast, she said. I've waited 34 years already, I told her. They found out I was digging before I wanted them to. Banks ask questions. Tellers talk. Vivian called me that night, and her voice was flat and sharp. I hear you've been poking around your grandfather's accounts. He asked me to. He's confused, she snapped. You need to stay out of family business. I took a breath. You didn't set him a place at dinner, I said. So it's interesting to hear you use the word family now. She laughed, but there was no warmth in it. This is between his children, she said. You were never really one of us, and you know it. That sentence had ruled my whole life. But not anymore. I had a birth certificate. I had Lily's letter. I had proof. You're right, I said quietly. I was never one of you. I'm something you should have been more careful with. Then I hung up first. For 2 weeks, I built the record. With Grandpa's written consent, on one of his clear mornings, with Elaine there to witness it, I requested full statements. I built a timeline. Date, amount, account, recipient, purpose, note. Every transfer got a row. Every row got a tab. Every tab got backed by paper. People had mocked me my whole life for being too careful. Too serious. Too much. But the very thing they rolled their eyes at in me turned out to be the one thing they could not fight. I am the woman who keeps every receipt. And my mother had stolen from the wrong kind of daughter. During those 2 weeks, I found one thing that almost softened me. In an old box of family records, I found the dates from that awful year. Vivian had lost her 3rd pregnancy not long before Lily died. I found a note she had once written to Thomas that said, I can't grieve mine while I'm feeding hers. For one moment, I understood her. I did. I saw a grieving woman handed a child she hadn't asked for while her own pain was still fresh. I found records showing she stayed up with me through a fever that first spring. Pharmacy receipts. Her signature. Proof that once, maybe, she had tried. But then I turned another page. She had Lily's letter. She had known exactly what that money was. And she spent it on an SUV for the daughter she actually wanted. Understanding why someone started cold does not excuse what they chose to do warm. Whatever sympathy I had died there. I gave my Uncle Thomas one chance. I drove to his house with Lily's letter in my purse and no binder in my hand. I sat across from him at his kitchen table and laid the letter down between us. He looked at the handwriting and went pale. I know who I am now, I told him. I'm not here to destroy you. I'm asking you to help me protect Grandpa. For 1 second, I thought he might. His eyes filled. His fingers hovered over the letter. Then he slid it back toward me without touching it. Dad's fine, he said. Vivian is taking care of him. You always make drama out of everything, Nora. Let it go. Let it go. The family motto. The words they used to bury Lily. To keep me small. To avoid every hard truth that might cost them comfort. I stood up and picked up the letter. Okay, I said. I'll let you go. He didn't understand what I meant. I had stopped asking my family for permission to protect each other. From that point on, I was only asking the court. The second they sensed trouble, they moved faster. Elise pushed to rush the sale of the house through. Mason started pulling from smaller accounts still within reach. That was the worst part. The law moves carefully. A woman with access to a checkbook can move in an afternoon. I called Elaine in a panic. We file for emergency relief, she said. Now. So we did. We built the petition line by line. Every claim tied to a document. Every dollar tied to a date. No speeches. No drama. Just paper and proof. We filed on a Thursday. I remember because my hands were perfectly steady. We reported suspected elder financial exploitation. We asked for a full accounting. We requested an emergency suspension of Vivian's power of attorney. We asked the court to freeze the sale of the house. 2 days later, the first order came down. Temporary suspension granted. House sale frozen. I sat in my car outside the courthouse and cried, not because I had won, but because for the first time in my life, someone in authority had looked at the facts in front of me and believed me. There was only one thing left. My family didn't know yet. And Grandpa's 80th birthday was 9 days away. Vivian planned that party like a queen planning her own parade. Big spread. Relatives. Neighbors. Church friends. Fancy dishes. Lily's house glowing with lights. She needed to look like the devoted daughter-in-law. The faithful caretaker. The loving woman guiding an old man gently through his final years. I was not invited. Of course I wasn't. They thought I would do what I had always done. Stay home. Stay quiet. Stay outside. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I was going to that party. And I was bringing 2 things with me. A binder. And a lawyer. The night before, I sat at my kitchen table and built the binder one last time. Tab 1, Power of Attorney. Tab 2, Transfers. Tab 3, the drained care account and Lily's letter. Tab 4, the draft will. Tab 5, the frozen house sale and court order. Then I did one more thing. I baked the spiced pear pie. Not to make peace. Not to win anybody over. I baked it because it was my mother's recipe, and I wanted something of hers at that table when the truth finally sat down. The next morning the snow had stopped. Lily's house glowed warm from the street. Cars lined the curb. A paper sign on the porch said 80 years young in Vivian's neat handwriting. I sat in my car for one long breath. Then I picked up the pie and the binder and walked to the front door. And I let myself in. The room went still. Thomas saw me first and looked sick. Mason froze with a beer halfway to his mouth. Elisa's smile died on her face. And there, near the bookshelf, holding coffee like she belonged there, stood Elaine. My mother came toward me fast. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "This is family only. Leave." Before I could answer, Grandpa's voice cut through the room. "Nora stays." Everyone turned. He was standing now, one hand gripping the chair, eyes clear, chin lifted. "She stays," he said again. "And the rest of you are going to sit down and listen to what she found." Vivian gave a short bright laugh. "Henry, you're tired." "I am 80, he said. "Not dead. Sit down." Then he looked at me and pointed to the seat beside him. "My granddaughter stays." The word granddaughter hit the room like thunder. I walked to the table and placed the binder down. Then I set the pie beside it. Warm spice rose into the silence. "Most of you don't know who I am," I said. "So let's start there." My voice was calm. Calmer than I felt. Calmer than anyone else in that room. My mother was Lily Bennett. I am not a charity case this family took in. I am the daughter you hid. Ruth, the old neighbor, put a hand over her mouth. Thomas closed his eyes. I opened the binder. Since Grandpa's fall, with his permission, I've reviewed the records tied to his accounts. In March, Vivian became his agent under power of attorney. Under that authority, money began leaving his accounts. I turned pages. May. $12,000 to Elise. Marked loan. No repayment record. June. $9,000 to Mason. Also marked loan. No repayment record. Elise shot to her feet. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I do," I said, and turned another page. This account was meant for Grandpa's care. In April, it held $140,000. By November, it held 900. The room went dead still. 900, I repeated. I didn't need to shout it. The number did the work for me. It paid for a car, I said. A roof. Renovations in a home that does not belong to Henry Bennett. Now Vivian was shaking. How dare you, she snapped. After everything we gave you. That word again. Gave. Like my life had been one long donation. Then she said the thing she always said when she wanted me back in my place. You were a kindness, Nora. Not a daughter. This time I didn't flinch. I slid my birth certificate out of the binder and laid it on the table. State seal up. Lily Bennett on the line marked mother. I was Lily's daughter from the day I was born, I said. You just needed me not to know it. Then I turned to the guests. She needed me to believe I was nobody, because nobodies don't ask questions. Nobodies don't object. Nobodies don't notice when money disappears. But a granddaughter does. Grandpa's voice cracked from the head of the table. She's mine, he said. Lily's girl. And I had been ashamed for years. Ruth started crying. Elise stared at the birth certificate like it had slapped her. Mason sat down hard. Vivian lunged for the binder. And that was when Elaine stepped forward and set down her coffee. I wouldn't, she said mildly. The room turned to her. I'm Nora Bennett's attorney. Everything in that binder has already been filed. 2 days ago, the court suspended Vivian's power of attorney pending full review. The sale of this house is frozen. Adult Protective Services has been notified. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Elaine went on in the same calm voice. No one here may move another dollar of Henry Bennett's funds without legal oversight. That was it. No screaming match. No dramatic reveal from nowhere. Just the law, arriving right on time with paperwork. Vivian stood in the middle of her beautiful party with her mouth open and nothing left to hide behind. Mason looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Elise was already digging through her phone with trembling hands. I closed the binder. The pie was still warm. Grandpa reached his hand toward me across the table, and I took it. I don't want any of my family handling this anymore, he said. I want someone neutral. Someone watching every dollar. He looked right at me. Including you, sweetheart. Especially you. I won't have them say you did this for money. I nodded. Because he was right. Then I looked at everyone in that room and said the thing I had needed them to hear for years. I don't want your money. Not the house. Not the accounts. Not $1. You can leave me out of every will. I came here because somebody had to stand between this man and the people stealing from him. And it turns out the only one willing to do it was the kindness you threw away. That is how it ended. Not fast. Not clean. But true. The court appointed a neutral fiduciary named Marcia Cole. She took over Grandpa's finances with all the warmth of a locked safe, which was exactly what we needed. The accounting confirmed almost everything in my binder. Some money came back. The SUV was sold. Repayment plans were set. There were no handcuffs, no flashing cameras, no perfect movie ending. Just slow consequences. Vivian never apologized. Thomas sent one text months later. I'm sorry about Lily. That was the closest he ever got to telling the truth. I stopped waiting for more. I stopped holding doors open for people who only liked me when I stood outside them. Grandpa stayed in Lily's house with proper care. On his good mornings, he still asks for pie. I put him on a stool in my kitchen and place my hands under his and we make it together. The cruelest thing they ever taught me was that I had to earn family. The best thing I ever learned was that real family doesn't ask for that. The next Thanksgiving, I set the table again. 8 places. Pressed linen. Handwritten cards. The good gravy boat. But this time the chairs filled. Grandpa at the head. Ruth from next door, telling me stories about Lily as a girl until I almost felt like I remembered her. Elaine, who turned out to be funny and lonely on holidays and weirdly great with a corkscrew. A friend from work I had kept at a distance for too many years. A neighbor and her kids. People I chose. People who chose me back. The spiced pear pie sat in the center of the table where it had always belonged. And when I cut it, I told them whose recipe it really was. My mother once told me we only set one good table this year. She meant it like a door closing. In the end, she was right about one thing. You really do only need one good table. You just have to stop begging for a chair if there's long enough to build your own.